Hey folks, Galen here. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that our 2025 Project Manager Salary Survey is now live. We use this survey to help PMs all over the world get the info they need to get a clear sense of their earning potential. By adding your story to the survey, you're contributing to valuable research that will give you and our entire PM community better pay transparency as you progress through your careers. And once the results are in, we'll send you the full report. To participate, head on over to thedpm.com/salary2025. All right, on with the show. Trust. It never comes for free. It's Monday morning and you find yourself facing down a new client that looks grumpier than that cat meme. The previous project manager cut and ran, and you've inherited a project that is so far off the rails that train metaphors don't even hold up anymore. Your colleagues advised you to go in guns blazing. Show them who's boss, they said. Don't agree to do anything. Shut them down, they said. Most PMs would be crumpling under the pressure at this point, but you've got a secret weapon. You know how to establish rapport and start building trust. Not with gimmicky banter and expensive dinners, but with authenticity. You've done your homework, you've come prepared. You know your stuff, and you're ready to position yourself as their strategic partner. But before you get down to business, there's just one thing to do. You smile confidently, and you say, "Hey, I'm the new project lead. Nice to meet you. How was your weekend?" And you watch the ice break itself. If you've struggled to justify the ROI on building strong, multi-dimensional client relationships, this episode is for you. We're going to talk with a client services expert about ways to build trust and rapport with your clients in a way that impacts your projects positively, keeps your budget and utilization in line, and makes you an invaluable asset to your agency. Hey folks, thanks for tuning in. My name is Galen Low with the Digital Project Manager. We are a community of digital professionals on a mission to help each other get skilled, get confident, and get connected so that we can amplify the value of project management in a digital world. If you want to hear more about that, head on over to thedpm.com/membership. Okay, today we're talking about client relationships and the role that a project manager can play in developing that kind of rapport that contributes to the sustained impact that their projects can have. With me today is Melissa Morris, a deeply experienced agency specialist and founder of Agency Authority, a project management and operations consultancy that helps agencies operate productively and profitably without the toxicity. Melissa, thanks for being here with me today.
Oh, I'm so excited for this conversation. We've already been brainstorming tons of great things. So I'm really excited to dig in here.
Yeah, I know. And even just like us prepping for this, we came up with 17 other podcast and event ideas.
At least.
So, and it's been
At
a blast. So more to come from us. But I'm really excited to dive in because one of the things that you and I were talking about was just this notion of how project managers, especially working within agencies or some kind of client services context, how they can strategically and also just authentically develop rapport with their clients in a way that is good for business. And it got me really thinking because like in my community, sometimes folks need to vent a little bit, right? It can be a frustrating experience working with clients. They're like, oh gosh, it's like this kind of exasperation. But overall, it's like not necessarily something that needs to be the case. I thought maybe I'd get your hot take on a hot question right off the bat. And my question basically is this, the relationship between a client and an agency project manager can often be really quite adversarial. I'm just thinking like, why is that the case? And why is it worth investing in building better relationships instead of just accepting that this is just the way it is in agency world?
Yeah, I think there definitely can start to feel like this us versus them type of relationship. They're doing this to me. They asked for more revisions. And I think what's important to realize is as the agency, you have been hired in as the expert. You have been brought in, you have the expertise. That means you're the one leading this relationship. So that means you can also lead and guide, whether it feels very adversarial or it feels very friendly and it feels good and it feels like a good relationship. And I think with all relationships, that starts to come with good communication, just really good communication, really strong client onboarding to start. I think getting clear about scope, timeline, deliverables, and staying in good communication with your client does lead to friendly client relationships versus those that feel like us versus them.
I think it's really good because I think a lot of folks enter the role on purpose or by accident, right? And things happen to them and it feels very reactive. It's like, okay,
Yes.
client requests coming in and like, there's this pressure to do a thing. And I don't think a lot of project managers enter the role thinking of themselves as a specialist. And if they do think of themselves as a specialist, it's not often that they think of themselves as a relationship specialist, that they're in the lead. Like, I like that framing that you are leading the relationship. It's not happening to you. Things will happen to you, but like that overall thing is something that you can control. I like that sort of twist of like, yeah, you can make it positive, like it's a perspective, but also not like delusionally. You can actually do this. There are things you can do to improve communication, to make the relationship a little bit more comfy and fun. I think a lot of folks sometimes will say to me, they're like, yeah, but clients are clients. And like, why would I invest more time to make this a good relationship? Sure, maybe it'll be easier for me, but it seems like more work. How do I benefit?
Yeah. And we talked about this too. I am always of the mindset it is easier to keep the clients that you do have than to go find new ones.
Mm-hmm.
And think about it. Your current clients are your business. I'm going to say it again. Your current clients are your business. If you didn't have any of your current clients, would you have a business? And I think it's easy to forget that because we are get the project, pass it off, go find the next sale, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that can start to be the mindset, particularly if you have an agency or business that is a little more project oriented versus ongoing relationship oriented. But I always think you should be thinking about your current clients. Yes, have a pipeline. Yes, get in sales. Yes, be focused on lead gen. Absolutely. But you could also be asking more of your current clients. Is there another project they can slide into? Can we make sure they renew their agreement? Can they send you referrals? Nurturing your current clients will go a long way towards a very healthy bottom line in your agency.
I love that in terms of like a sort of relationship driven business model. Because to your point, acquiring a new client is a lot of work. It's expensive.
It's a lot of work.
There's risk involved. And when you have existing clients, like that is probably some of the best way to at least have an ongoing pipeline or opportunity to kind of do more great work without necessarily having to kind of go back out, into the cold calling world. The thing I'm thinking about in my head is that at the time of recording, a lot of folks are sort of worried about layoffs or have been hit by layoffs. And some of the stories I hear are that, yeah, like they cut the whole, project management team down, like way down, but they kept the sales team and they're like, what gives? And you can kind of see how the model of like, yeah, let's just churn through projects and clients. Like we need to get new clients, actually could paint I was going to say bad picture, but like, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't necessarily bode well for a project manager.
Yeah, it's confusing. It doesn't feel in alignment. You're like, I'm doing a lot here. You're telling me, oh, nurture your clients. And they're just worried about the sales team. But I can tell you, I worked in agencies for almost 10 years before I started my own business. And during that time at these agencies, it was my job to grow the current book of clients and not go get new ones. That was sales. Like that wasn't my role. But if I was handed an account and it was a $500,000 account, I was expected to grow that and look for opportunities and retain that relationship. That was absolutely a part of my job, right? You even think about the title, account manager. You are the manager. You're leading it. You're in the charge of it. You should always be looking for opportunities to grow your book of business with the client that you have.
I love that. I want to come back to that too, because my background has always been like an account manager / project manager / BD kind of hybrid role.
Well, we all do in that world, right?
Well, I mean, like, isn't that, that is the sort of like, the agency life, the agency hustle, not necessarily like the icky side, but like, good work begets good work. And it is sort of relationship driven. That is a way to run an agency profitably, predictably, all that stuff. And that trickles down to the staff to have that stability, to have that level of comfort where it's not all new, all chaotic all the time. And, I can see a lot of benefit to that. I want to come back to that in a little bit, but I wanted to touch on, I want to learn a bit more about agency authority. Like you are the founder there, you're a consultancy that works with agencies to look at their project management process, to look at their operations. Can you tell me a bit about like who your team helps and how?
Yeah, so we serve multi-six-figure agencies working to scale towards $1 million. And we do that by helping them get the foundations in place to support sustainable scaling. And we do that through a framework called TOP, where we're focusing on your team, your offers, your processes, and your pipeline. So while I am a big fan of nurturing your current clients and maintaining that, I also understand that sales is a part of that. So we're looking at these 4 pillars because I have found that even into $1 million agencies and multi-million dollar agencies, if you don't have a solid team, solid offers, solid processes, and a solid pipeline, you've got some work to do. You're definitely going to have trouble scaling sustainably, keeping revenue up, profit margins up. these are just the four pillars of really any successful agency.
That's really cool. I like that. The pipeline piece also, like, as a mix in some of the agencies I worked with, like, it was sort of a forecast or a projection of net new opportunities, right? That pipeline, but also still the like retained account forecast, right? Like, what are we projecting for this account? I don't know. Not everyone would say call it a pipeline, but it is that still, cash flow, revenue stream, like, flow of work to keep your staff doing, what they do well. I really like that. I like the targeting of like the, getting from the multi six figures into $1 million. There's just so much that happens for an agency in that stage.
There's a lot
to grow, like in a sustainable and predictable way.
Yes, there's like these pivotal benchmarks, right? Like once you get to that first 300K, you're like, okay, we've got something rolling here. And then you start getting to that 500,000 and you're like, oh, this is really getting a lot more than I can keep my hands on, right? And me and my right hand are having trouble. And then you're bringing on more team. And now that team is really confused because they don't have the institutional knowledge of the 2-3 people who've been supporting you all along the way. And oftentimes your clients are changing. The type of clients you serve and support are starting to look different. So how do we lean into these new clients and these new offers that feel more in alignment with the direction we want to take our agency without alienating the people who got us here and the clients who supported us to this moment? And how do we work some into new packages? How do we bless and release and thank those that just aren't a good fit for us, and doing that in a really great way so that we can all still be friendlies and all that good stuff. So there's lots of steps to get to that $1 million. And once you start getting closer to that 500,000 and beyond, it can feel a little bit like a wild ride there for a hot minute.
The game changes. I like even your framing on that, because one thing that I really like about what you do is sort of this obsession, if I can say that.
Oh, obsession's
with, like,
there.
And like obsession about like client relationships. Like what you just said there was not about, cut off all those clients that we don't want anymore and, onward and upward. It's like, how do we kind of retain and, keep this sort of like good blood, for lack of a better word, right? So between everybody. It's something that factors in your work a lot. I was wondering, can you tell me the story of just like one of your client relationships that kind of sparked this obsession?
Yeah. So I was thinking about this, and years ago, I worked at this boutique agency and we brought on a local ice cream shop as a client, and they had a teeny tiny budget. I mean, if it was even 100K, that was like generous. And they were struggling. This couple was really struggling with this ice cream shop. Sales were really down. They were actually nearing retirement age and had hopes of selling the shop, right? Like this was part of it. And they were very stressed. They were doing, random little ads here, sponsorships there, and just really, really stressed when they came to us. And I started working with these folks, and I took their teeny tiny budget, but we got it focused. We made small shifts, small changes. Even within the store, we made some changes for them. And within about a year, we completely turned it around. Sales were back up. Yes, sales were back up. They were doing great. And I think by year 3, they sold the ice cream shop for the profit. They went off, they retired, they got their little house by the river that they had been wanting. And just to be able to see like the transformation that this work can really do for people. And, they trusted us. And I felt that responsibility too. I'm like, they hired us, I think, because it was such like a intimate, important moment, like I knew how important it was for these people, and it felt really important to me. It just really was an easy way. When you're working with a bigger corporation, or we worked with like the county's recycling program, there's all these peoples and there's bureaucracy, and it's hard to feel as connected to it, right? But in this instance, I was just so connected to it. It was just like a magnification of how important these relationships are and what they can mean for the people you're serving, and how awesome it was to help these people. So that was definitely the obsession. It all started with some mint chocolate chip.
We got paid in ice cream for a few years.
I would say they did give us a lot of free ice cream, which also may have contributed to this. We got a lot of free ice cream.
But like, isn't that the seed of it, right? Like, it's like a relationship where you cared, right? And you had this sort of empathy. You were kind of along for the ride of the mission that they were on. And by the sounds of it, it started rocky. Yes, they were like, we need help. We have a small budget, but we're throwing it all at you guys. And I'm sure there were stressful moments of like, this is our livelihood. Like, you guys need to take this seriously. We're freaking out. And they might, not every email and correspondence and phone call with them, I imagine, was nice and calm and tickety boo, because
No, right.
it was their business. This was their like life plan. They needed to make this happen. And that can be stressful in and of itself. And there could be some agency folks and project managers, especially, to be like, you're just another client. Like, I can't be bothered to care about your retirement plan. I've got 6, 10, 25 other projects on the go. I just kind of need to shift you on. Whereas this is something where you're able to kind of like get on side with their mission, feel like a part of it, and change your behavior in that way. And also build that trust. You use the word trust. Trust doesn't come for free in my world, right? It's not like they walked in the door and were like, we trust you. Here's all our money, right?
Right. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. There were rocky points, but coming back to clear communication, really nurturing that relationship, showing up for them, keeping them in the loop. We were feeling like in a deep partnership about this, right? And it was like their success was also my success. I did a good job if they're selling more ice cream. And so that connectedness and that partnership, I think, leads to even bigger transformations a lot of the time.
I really like that. Based on what you learned there and across other client relationships, what advice do you have for folks who are like leading projects, like starting off a relationship? And sometimes, a project manager, especially, sometimes we get dropped in midway. Maybe that's true for all crafts within an agency or anywhere. But, you get dropped in midway. The relationship isn't necessarily new in terms of like agency and client, but you're new. What's your top tip for getting that relationship started on the right foot?
Respect that it's new and treat it like it's new. So anytime I was taking over an account, I always encourage any agencies or businesses I work with, if you are a new PM or a new account manager taking over, or on the client side, there is a new team member coming on board, especially when that's a decision maker, you do a micro onboarding. You come in, hi, I'm new to the account. I've spent a lot of time reviewing notes and getting up to speed on your account. Here's what I see. Here's where I see our accomplishments have been. Here's what I see is outstanding for us. And this is what I'm looking at as the way ahead. Does that feel in alignment? Does that feel correct? And this opens up the door. One, they're starting to already get confidence in you. Okay, they know what's going on. They're getting brought up to speed. This is looking good. Option number 2, when someone was on the way out of that account, we don't know the circumstance. Was this person ultimately fired? Had they not been doing a good job? Did something happen in their life and this transition happened very quickly? That is a prime opportunity for something to slip through the cracks. So let's circle the wagons and make sure everybody's on the same page. And it doesn't have to take long, right? We don't need a big drawn out thing. But if I could spend 15 minutes saying, hey, does this sound right? Are we all in sync here? Yep, that sounds right. Cool, let's go. Or they can say, oh, wait a second. The old account manager was supposed to be doing X, Y, and Z, and that wasn't happening. Okay. Now we've got an opportunity to really course correct before 2-3 months down the road, you're fired. And they're like, yeah, this isn't working out. We're parting ways.
There's so much in there that I love. Because I like this idea of like onboarding a new person from the client team into your project, no matter when it happens. Like, they're new, treat it as new. But I like that it wasn't like, tell me everything, like, like it's like, do your homework and come to the table smart, not omniscient, right? Don't pretend you know everything. But I like that idea of like, here's what I see. Here's what I think we should do. Does that sound right? And then you can kind of get through that. If the answer is no, not quite right, there's this thing, then you have this opportunity where you understand where there's been pain in the past and can start building that trust by addressing that pain, not, bending over backwards to be like, great, you now get, a phone call and a status report every day until,
Yeah.
until the project is over, not hyperextending yourself, but like, we're going to address that, and I think there's that sort of, some people would be like, oh, that's customer service 101. But I don't know that it is so like basic of a concept. It's actually quite nuanced and strategic to drive that conversation and service the customer, service your client in a way that is balanced and that is strategic, that is beneficial, not like customer is always right mentality, but you know what? If we can sort of use this, a pain point or a challenge or something to care about a lot to have the anchor for our trust, then let's use that.
Absolutely. And I have seen where, because I'm the new account manager, I feel like I have to show up with great ideas and push forward and we're going to crush this. and all this enthusiasm, and you can get swept up in that and miss something really important. But to your point, we don't want to swing the pendulum the other way and be like, all right, loop me in. What's the status here, guys? Right?
Get
No.
me up to speed.
Give
You
me
pay
up to speed.
me
Yeah,
my billable rate to tell me stuff you already know.
Exactly. So that's all. I just love this mix of this is what I see. Is that what you see too?
It's really strong positioning. One of the things that I've been thinking about as well is just like in a lot of agencies, like I was always an account manager, project manager hybrid, which meant I was client facing, I own the relationship. But project managers, specifically in agencies, aren't always client facing. And sometimes they only come to meetings to, yeah, I have here in my notes, report on the weather, right? You're like, here's your project status report. Back to you, Jane. Back to you, Servine, right? Like, and it's like, you don't own the relationship. You're just there to kind of like do your spiel. But like, how can a PM contribute to a healthy client relationship without maybe stepping on the toes of someone like an account manager or someone like a business development manager, when they don't own the relationship? What is the right way to find that balance? Not overstep, not try and take over, and still maybe get some time on stage in front of the client to build that relationship?
Yeah, that's such a great question because project managers sometimes have to kind of be bad cop, right? Like the account manager gets to be, oh, my buddy, the client, oh, they need extra time. And the project manager has to say, no, there is no extra time. There's not extra budget. There's not extra time. The answer is no. And so it can be tough then to be bad cop and good cop at the same time, right? Like still show up in a way that is fostering a really strong client relationship, sticking to the overall agency's timeline and not have your account manager mad at you. Like you know how much they pay us? They should get an extra round of revisions. And you're like, no, they shouldn't. So I do think it is a very practiced skill set and definitely requires relationship management of its own accord with the project, right? Because there's a big difference between saying, no, the deadline is the end of the week versus saying, we have the deadline at the end of this week. And if we're going to meet your overall timeline, we're going to need this from you by Friday. What roadblocks are coming up for you that is making you feel like this isn't going to happen? Is there something we can do to support you? Hello, upsell, add on to help you with that, to help you get that across the finish line because we want to make your goal. Where can we make up time somewhere else? So really coming in from that problem solving mindset, what do they always say? Don't come to me with a problem, come to me with solutions. And I think that is a project manager's number one job. Don't come and say the project's completely off track. Come and say, we need to course correct. These are some options that I see that we can course correct. Which one feels most viable?
I love that. And like, there's so many people who do think, yeah, their job is to say no. And no in any relationship is it's fickle. You know what I mean?
It is fickle.
And everything is sort of a negotiation, I guess I should say, right? Where like, I don't want to make it seem transactional, but the solutions focus is there is something we can do. It might cost more money and it might take more time, but there's a thing that we can do. And, let us be helpful. And I also like the idea. I mean, you said something about like good cop and bad cop and being, one and the same person, which I can definitely relate to, especially as someone who was like an account manager and project manager in one.
I wore both hats as well at the same time.
It's like, you're like, it's like you're, Gollum and Schmeagol, like talking to yourself going like, no, but we want to be able to give them, an extra round of revisions. Like, no, precious time. That's right. It's like, you have to be two things. But also, I guess the other thing that's in there is the fact that an account manager and a project manager can also function as a team. And that's probably a whole different episode of the sort of quote unquote, sometimes adversarial relationship between sales and account manager and project managers. But when they're working together to like make that decision in advance to be like, we can't do endless revisions because they won't hit their goal. We'll just like cycle endlessly. This business will go under, like we just can't do that. What can we do? Let's like get on the same page. Let's decide who's going to be good cop, bad cop. Let's decide what our message is before we go into the room so that's not happening in real time. And so we look like something that is, can be trusted. Because I think the other thing is when a promise gets made when someone is outside of the room and then it's kind of like, oh, but we can't do that. It's like, well, we already promised that we do that. Like that's where a lot of that friction comes from. That translates into a negative client relationship too. Because they're like, guys, get your act together. Like, can we have revisions or not? Because I was told that we could have it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought that up. That's such a great point. That project manager, account manager relationship is so, so important. If anybody's a parent out there, like, okay, united front, When we go to the children, there's no TV later, united front. Okay, you got me. You got my back. I got your back. Right. And so that's the same approach. You guys got to go in like we got each other's back. This is where we stand and this is what we're going after. Right.
I like that model. It's like we are parenting together and the client is the child. Okay.
Right.
Clients ever are like, hey,
Wait a second.
wait a
Like,
minute.
okay, maybe sometimes I do stamp my feet a little bit and whine and cry.
It's actually a luxury. If I could get treated like my kid, that'd be great.
I know, right?
It does raise the question too, though, in a world where billable hours utilization is a thing, right? Like that's part of how an agency operates, how the client services world operates. And if it's not really your kind of job description or something you're measured on, how do you advise your agency clients on balancing these billable hours versus relationship building? Like, can agencies even measure the ROI of building this client rapport without also being blinded by this like dip in utilization? You're like, whoa, now suddenly you went from 85% billable to 70% billable because you're having conversations with a client. Like, how do you help your agency clients understand the value of relationships?
Yeah, and some of this is, which we haven't quite touched on yet, is having really solid processes in place for your business. So when I'm leading a client meeting, I should have an agenda. And I know the first 5 or 6 minutes is maybe that small talk, right? We don't want to get carried away. We don't want to spend, 15, 20 minutes chit-chatting about vacations. But can we just take a moment to check with them? How are you doing? How you feeling? Oh, I remember your son plays baseball. How's his team doing? Right? Remember their spouse's names or their significant other's names. Remember their children's names. Who are the important people in their life that they're, so-and-so, they mentioned they're having a birthday. Little things like that. Keep track of that. And those are small things that you can do. When they mention their best friend's name, jot it down, right? Hey, you mentioned your best friend loves the Yankees too. Tell them they're killing it this year, right? So just little things like that, just being thoughtful in ways like that and spending that few minutes. And then to bring it back to processes, you can also have automations. You can have checkpoints that do some of this for you. So have your client tell them your birthday and they automatically get a card in the mail or they get an auto email. Do you know, like it doesn't have to be, we think it has to be these grand things and it really doesn't. Just a simple email like that can go a long way. Check-ins, even just, how are we feeling? How's work going? Can I support you in a better way? Like I love an automated questionnaire that goes out midway through an agreement that just says, do you feel like we're meeting your goals? Is there something I can be doing better? What am I doing that feels good? What can I change? Even just being heard in that way helps nurture that relationship. And then what you can get back from that is golden. Oh, we're doing good. We're on track. Oh, something's not feeling right for them. Okay, let's get on a quick call. So we just give them a platform to be heard and share their thoughts on the process, which is an automated form. Easy.
I like that. And, like sometimes in my head, like, I don't know, we all get marketed to, and you get those marketing automation emails that feel cold or they forgot to put in the right variable. So it says, hi, first name, just checking in about that thing I'm trying to sell you. And you're like, wow, that's so cold and impersonal. I don't want to do that to my projects. But actually what you're saying is kind of like, it's the thoughtfulness and care that just gets put into a process. Because you care, because you do want to hear back from them and you're not just trying to sell them, it will probably lead to good things. But really, it's sort of, micro things can actually make a big difference. And then you can also blend some of this relationship management into the work. I think people think they're like, oh my gosh, well, I have to go and spend like 4 hours building my pin board of like the family tree of my client, and have a dossier. That's going to take time. I'm not going to be able to build that time. I'm screwed. I need to go golfing. I need to hit the golf club, like with my clients, and we got to do 18 holes in order for me to do this. Like, I don't have time. It doesn't have to be big. It can be smaller. It just has to guide the work.
Absolutely. And I've even done small things where if I know a client is just really underwater, right? They had to let go of a team member. They've got somebody, I know they're putting in long days. I'm going to shoot them a Starbucks gift card. Just, here you go, $10, easy, no utilization, not a big thing. Like, I know you've got a lot going on right now. And they're always like, oh, like just knowing that I was paying attention, right? I'm paying attention goes a long way.
This is sort of an off the cuff question, but with the clients that you work with, do you often see a project manager who has like a bit of a budget to do relationship management? Or does that kind of sit more with account managers? Or is everyone just kind of out of pocket but they get rewarded in terms of like hitting their KPIs.
No, I think I do see a lot of agency owners that do have some small budget for things of this nature, to send a little gift card or to send a welcome package during onboarding, those sort of things. So I think when it comes to that, I do think that should be something that, overall the agency or business has addressed. I don't think anybody should feel pressure to do that out of their own pocket. And it wouldn't even have, that's something I like to do, but it could even just be an email that says, hey, I know you've been really swamped and we talked about you getting that to me on Friday. It actually isn't going to change my workflow if you get it to me Tuesday morning, right? Like, it's okay, right? Check with your project manager first. Don't change timelines. But I think the point is we can just do small things to let our clients know that we're thinking about them and that they're important to us. And it doesn't have to take a lot of time and it doesn't have to take a lot of money.
Love that. We've been talking kind of about, I don't know, pleasant clients and client relationships, folks that, it might not always be cozy and good and nice, but, there's ways that we can kind of build trust and build this relationship. And I know that some folks are listening to, and they're saying, but sometimes clients just suck. And it's true. Like, there are bullies out there. There are toxic clients. There are some clients that just simply are the worst. And we could invest a lot of time sort of building up the relationship, but they might not actually be good for culture, mental health, business in general. And like, what do we do there?
Yeah. So I do believe sometimes there are just bad clients. And this is probably going to come as a shock to some people, but you can fire clients.
Ooh.
It's allowed.
Like, what? I want to dive into that more. I mean, gosh, that's another one that's potentially another podcast episode, but maybe we hint at it a little bit. Who can fire a client? Because I know a lot of project managers out there just went, oh, yes, please. Yeah. Can we fire them all?
All of them. All of the clients. Done.
Yeah, they got to go.
Yeah.
How does that decision get made?
Yeah. So it's definitely not one you make lightly, right? This whole conversation has been about nurturing your clients. And so there should definitely be a lot of internal checkpoints and conversations before you ever get to the point of considering firing a client. And this is where good processes, policies will really play an important role. So you can come back to, are we on scope? Are we being good communicators about timeline? Are we being good communicators about budget? Are we doing everything we can? And make sure you're being clear about it, because sometimes you think you're being clear and you're not being clear, right? Like, well, I told him I needed it as soon as possible. That's not clear, right? Tuesday by 11 a.m. is clear. So I always recommend you're taking those steps first. Are we being very, very clear? Have we had a conversation with the client, like a realignment call? Have we gotten them on the phone and said, we want to revisit scope. We want to revisit, we're not going to say boundaries necessarily to them, but what working hours are, right? Like however they may be in violation, we may want to have a conversation with them about tone or who they're reaching out to. We want you to have the best point of contact. The best way to do that is always reach out to your account manager. We can't have you messaging the project manager and the design team for additional time. They're not going to know. So the best way to get you the best answer. So really address, what are the problem points? Have we been very clear with them on how we can course correct? Have we had conversations? Have we given them time? How did they receive that information? So lots of conversations along the way. And then at that point, if things are just still really not working well, the client is just not on board with this and just continuing to push boundaries, scope, whatever that looks like, then you do need to take it to leadership, whether that's the owner directly, a middle person. And then, of course, always, 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 you have to look back at your contract, right? Like, yes, I say we can fire clients, but only if your contract says that you can as well, right? Like, you always want to make sure legally you're fulfilling all of your obligations, which comes back to good processes. Do you have a clear contract? Do you have a clear scope, statement of work? So as long as all of that and, legally we're doing what we're supposed to do, then you take it to leadership and let that decision get made there.
I appreciate that due diligence and like the gravity of the decision too. It's like, are we doing everything we can? Because it is possible for an agency to make a client a bad client by thinking that they're actually doing a good job when they're actually not. Turn the mirror on yourself first and then like, okay, now let's move the conversation forward.
Absolutely.
It's funny because like this sort of quote or thing that I was told pops to mind, right? Like no one trains a client to be a good client. So like there's that thing too. And that's a whole different thing as well. But I want to circle back on something you said earlier, actually something you've been saying throughout. There's such good tips about relationship management. And I know a lot of folks are like, no one trained me to do this. Like I didn't know I could buy a gift card or it was okay to send an email to check in if my client's having a hard time with a restructure. No one taught me to quote unquote walk the halls. Like I think maybe account managers probably do get trained this way, but anyone outside of that role, like a project manager, if they want to kind of learn more about some of these like techniques and like the skills needed to nurture relationships, where can they go?
Yeah, that's a really great question because this isn't something I feel like that is taught or shared. I always think about it. I think we can overcomplicate it though. Just think about any relationship. What is any relationship? How is that successful? Well, I'm clear, I'm kind, I pay attention, I show up, right? So I think even just not overcomplicating it and just remembering that your clients are humans and they have, I guess you can think of that saying too, like everybody's, got something going on you don't know anything about, or walk a mile in their shoes and then you'll know. And it's important too, with the internet, we're not geographically independent anymore, right? So we are working with people in different time zones, with different backgrounds, with different cultures, different continents at times. So sometimes what's feeling like, oh, they're very short, just culturally, maybe that's how it is, right? Like, and that's not anything negative. They don't mean anything by it. So I think trying to keep that in mind too, which is just where it comes back to communication. So in that instance, you can say, I just wanted to check in. Just want to make sure everything's feeling good. Do you feel like we're making good progress? Everything's on track? Yeah, everything's great. We're good to go. Okay, then don't read into their emails, right? Like don't take them for anything more than they're just an email, right?
I had a client who would respond with fine, period. For us, it was like, oh, that seemed really like disappointed because we would say that. We were like, fine. But actually, they just meant fine. That's fine.
It's fine. I know. I know. This man I worked with years ago, talk about just stone-faced all the time. And I had to like bring him the printed copy of the ads and stuff. This was years ago when I worked in the agency. And I would literally bring this man these ads and he would go, okay. And I mean, at least 40 to 60 seconds of silence. Face not moving. I'm ready to check his pulse. Like this is how just still this man is staring at these ads. And he'd go, these look good. Like, that was it. I was like, okay. And I just had to get used to it. That's Walt. Like you just got to get used to it. And I doubled the work we did with him. For the first few months I worked with him, every time I was like, oh gosh, he's going to do that weird stare thing again. Oh no. And then it would be good. And then he started talking about how he was doing this like Beachbody workout program and this, and and I was just so baffled. But I just came to accept that's how he was. And we were just fine.
I love that. No, it's really good. They're relationships, right? I mean, it's nuanced, but at the end of the day, they are relationships and your clients are human.
Exactly.
Melissa, thanks so much for spending the time with me today. It's been so much fun, so insightful.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. I think this was a really great conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll have you back. All right, folks, there you have it. As always, if you'd like to join the conversation with over 1,000 like-minded project management champions, come join our collective. Head on over to thedpm.com/membership to learn more. And if you like what you heard today, please subscribe and stay in touch on thedigitalprojectmanager.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.